Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Fiona Wilson. I'm the CEO of Earthwatch Institute, and thank you so much for your patience with the slight confusion around the start times of this afternoon's panel presentation. It's also, as is the want of these types of conventions, is that for some of us, even though we've been partnering on these things internationally, it's the first time some of us has met each other on these amazing projects. So thank you also for your patience as we greet each other instead of across the screen, and in fact in person, which is lovely. I have an esteemed international panel here, and I'm delighted to be talking about nature-based solutions from an implementation lens that focuses in on traditional knowledge and local community-led work. And beside me today is Moira Matu, who leads the ClimateWatch program within the Vanuatu's government's meteorological service. I have Delilah Grisman, who's representing the IUCN and the Global Ecosystem-based Adaptation Fund. Don't mistake her for Ali, so not quite right in terms of the photo. So thank you very much, Delilah. I also have with me Siasina Mele Louis. She leads the Traditional Knowledge Program for the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environmental Program, and SPREP, as we all know, and she's an incredible advocate and leader for us all who care about the integration of traditional knowledge into standard and conventional knowledge systems and science systems. So lovely to have you here. And of course, we have Mr. Montan Ramon, who is the director of the Vanuatu government's Meteorological and Geohazard Department, and it's just a delight to have you with us to talk further about the work that you're doing in adaptation for Vanuatu. Ooh. First challenge. You're going to do it for me, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians on all the lands and seas who have the very extraordinary gift to the rest of the world for the stewardship of our incredible world. Without their wisdom and without their continued advocacy for the importance of nature and the damage that we're doing to it and helping us solve it, it's just an honour to be involved. We're going to, as I said, community-led adaptation to climate change challenges. These are locally place-based organisations. We've got a global, regional and local perspective on these. And we're going to go through some of the Earthwatch's model of this type of work. We're a citizen science organisation, a global organisation of citizen science work, and we centre traditional knowledge and local communities in that work to be able to be a cross-sectoral organisation leading to outcomes. We're going to talk about the work of the Adaptation Fund, the Global Ecosystem Adaptation Fund, who is funding some of this extraordinary work and who we are honoured to be one of the recipients of that work, of that funding. We'll have Siasina talking to us about the traditional knowledge process that SPREP's going through with the Pacific nations. And then, of course, furthermore about to the national scope of the Vanuatu work on adaptation. Earthwatch, as I said, is global, so I just wanted to touch on two other nature-based solutions that we work on that uses the same model of local place-based work. That's Tiny Forests. So it's a globally significant program following the Miyawaki method of urban forestry. And what we do here is engage community. We plant the forests with the community, and then we get the community to engage in the adaptive monitoring of the services that these forests provide. You can see that just within 2 years' worth of planting, we've secured primarily corporate funding to deliver these programs. And having these we're looking to scale that program alongside so many other urban forestry initiatives that we can choose from. If you're here a bit early, you would have seen there was a video on our Safeguarding Wetlands for the Future, tidal wetlands. And again, prioritising the traditional knowledge. We have Indigenous-led approaches to wetlands monitoring and management. We have community-led monitoring that prioritises actions that then need to be invested in to safeguard those wetlands. And then we have a series of education programs that engage teachers and youth around understanding their own patch and then creating the actions and the interventions that are needed to enhance the values that they care about and to protect and mitigate the threats to the wetlands. Again, interestingly, this works outside of the environmental markets field, and it is being invested in primarily through corporations and philanthropy from our organisation. But the main reason we're here today is ClimateWatch. It's a program that was developed in 2009 with the University of Melbourne and the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia, because we had a gap in knowledge, scientific knowledge, ecosystem knowledge, around how climate change is impacting plants and animals. So this is a longitudinal study. It's rigorously, it's got a scientific advisory panel. We follow rigorous scientific methods that are easily translated to non-scientists to take up those observations. It's the largest phenology citizen science program in the Southern Hemisphere, and we have been at the forefront of making user-friendly education and observation tools, which in this case is the mobile app for ClimateWatch. And what I'd like to invite Delilah to talk about is the Global Ecosystem-based Adaptation Fund, because through their granting, we were able to pilot with the Vanuatu government, ClimateWatch Vanuatu. And that work started last year, and we'll hear more about that from our panellists. But please, Delilah, it'd be lovely.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. Thank you for having me, and thank you, audience members, for bearing with me instead of Ali, who I work closely with at IUCN as part of the climate change team. And one of our roles is acting as the Secretariat alongside UNEP in sort of administration of the Global EBA Fund. So I'm going to just provide a little bit of a background about the fund, and then also talk about sort of the driving principles and visions for the fund to give some context to the more exciting work that you'll hear discussed, which is the actual implementation side after me. So the fund is a $40 million funding mechanism for catalytic, innovative, and inclusive projects that aim to create sort of an enabling environment for ecosystem-based adaptation and to enhance sort of resilience of vulnerable communities and ecosystems in an integrated way. So why EBA? Why is the fund focused on EBA? The idea behind ecosystem-based adaptation, which presumably many people in the room are aware of, is that it harnesses the power of nature and biodiversity in particular, and ecosystem services to reduce vulnerability and to build resilience of human communities to climate change specifically. So EBA is defined as the use of biodiversity and ecosystem services as part of an overall adaptation strategy to help people to adapt to the adverse effects of climate change. So EBA focuses on benefiting humans and biodiversity in sort of a linked fashion, but how these benefits can be utilized sort of in the face of climate change in particular. So it's critical for this to really focus on kind of an integrated approach. It encompasses a broad set of approaches that include sort of the management of ecosystems and their services to reduce the vulnerability of impacts to climate change, such as conservation, sustainable management, and restoration of ecosystems, such as forests, grasslands, wetlands, mangroves, coral reefs, to reduce the harmful impacts of climate hazards, including shifting patterns or levels of rainfall, changes in maximum and minimum temperature, stronger storms, and increasingly sort of variable climatic conditions. So the fund initially kicked off in 2021, and we're currently funding 35 projects focused on sort of diverse ecosystems across the globe, and they're implemented in 26 countries with the ultimate aim, sort of the full goal of the funding project is to reach sort of 100 projects by 2028. So the projects of the fund range from developing sort of innovative financing mechanisms for marine and coastal resilience to undertaking sort of critical research and developing practical tools in biodiversity climate nexus sort of toolkits to implement the EBA actions, and also upscaling community resilience and adaptive capacity, sort of inclusive whole of society approaches, and to inform and support policy development at national and subnational levels. So it really spans the suite of actions. So currently we provide grants of around $250,000 US. And these are sort of catalytic Kickstarter grants. So proposals can be submitted by very diverse stakeholders, including NGOs, local community organizations, academia, the private sector. However, the fund cannot be provided to government entities at this level. So the main focus of the fund is, as I mentioned, to sort of support catalytic, innovative, and inclusive projects that aim to create sort of the enabling environment for the uptake of EBA. So the focus is mainly on these enabling environments in the field of implementation, which is kind of one of those big words that gets thrown around a lot. So in order to lend clarity to that, there are 3 different pillars that the fund operates under in terms of prioritizing the sorts of projects that it would target. And the first pillar is levers for catalytic change, which covers sort of activities focused on policy and policy influencing, education capacity building, and skills development. The second pillar is sort of functional data and science, and then the final pillar is innovation for adaptation. So through this thematic, through these sort of pillars, we also have thematic calls, which we introduced in 2023, and these aim to highlight sort of the most critical aspects and sectors that are highly vulnerable to climate change and present sort of a lot of opportunities for ecosystem-based adaptation in particular. So to date, the calls on EBA in urban environment and EBA and traditional and indigenous knowledge have been undertaken, sort of are in the funding stream, and the upcoming thematic funding, the 7th call for proposals, in parallel to the general application track, will focus on greening infrastructure through EBA. So in the 7th call, we will sort of prioritize applications for SIDS as well, small island developing states. So I just encourage everyone who's interested to find out more about the fund. Thanks.
Thank you, Delilah. Siasina, would I ask you please to talk a little bit about the traditional knowledge work that you're doing and how it relates to the integration? Essentially, what's that got to do with the work underway of a tool, an app that takes photos? What's going on?
Thank you for that question. Before I delve into the details, acknowledging the fund, expect there will be definitely more proposals coming your way. So I wanted to acknowledge that first, and of course acknowledge the support IUCN has provided and supported this partnership and collaboration. Because without that funding, I don't think we would have been able to pilot and see what the app can actually do and how we can tailor that to meet our needs. Where traditional knowledge fits into this, and what is a meeting place for traditional knowledge and an app. The traditional knowledge component of the work that we do, there's already been a lot of systematic approaches and tools that have been developed together with our key partner, the Bureau of Meteorology. We have a database, and we collect traditional knowledge pertaining to climate, weather events. We all know that a lot of our indigenous peoples have knowledge, that have years of experience observing nature. We all know that nature responds to the changes in climate before humans starts noticing that. We have evidence of that in the stories that we have been able to collect. However, in the Pacific and many of other indigenous communities, how this has been stored is we rely mostly on our oral traditions, on our different, it's stored in ways that does not allow for us to systematically analyze and use this information into modern science or use it to help inform policies. So what the app does is provide a mechanism that connects the dots. It systematically records our observations. Our traditional knowledge is based on knowledge pertaining to biological indicators. These are birds, animals, fruiting, flowering behavior, which is exactly what the app does. So we had one side of the, how do I say it? Our problem is that we weren't able to collect. We have challenges. The app actually helps us in verifying how has our traditional knowledge indicators changed. We know that not all of our traditional knowledge indicators are working, but how can we make sure that the knowledge that we're using or our communities are relying on? As a background information for some of our audience here, in the Pacific, we have remote communities that do not get any form of communication other than VHF radio. And if they're lucky, they will get it on time. Some of these communities are so isolated and remote, they don't even get information until you get a boat into these islands 2 weeks at a time, if there is consistency in transport. So the app assists and helps communities to not only get in touch with modern science, but it also speeds up our observation, because our communities have noticed that some of the indicators, there's been shifts, but they don't know how far forward has these indicators shifted. For example, some of the knowledge looks at an event. Once they start seeing a particular plant fruiting heavily, they know that traditionally they will get hit by an event within 2 weeks. But now we notice that even within your communities, you start to see that some of these plants are fruiting all year round. So where is the warning behavior in that? And that's what the app does, for us to systematically record when these changes are occurring, so that we can match up the traditional knowledge and how the environment is responding to these changes. So in a way, the app is contributing to resolving the challenges that our communities already face. And it also allows us to have a lot more people contributing. It's a way, it's bridging the gap between our knowledge holders having an access to a tool that they can verify themselves without relying on government agencies, without relying on researchers to come in and tell them. They now have this powerful tool to assist with updating their knowledge and also keeping an eye on environment, their own ecosystems. A lot of our communities, we tend to focus on the biological importance, but we rarely include a lot of these species as culturally important. In a lot of our plans, our biodiversity data sets that we have at the national level, perhaps this is another aspect that we should put under the different native plants, so that we tend to focus on the ecosystem value, but not on the other service that they provide, which should put also a value on whether they appear on the list and species that need to be protected. I think these are some of the connections that traditional knowledge, having these apps can bring into this space, and also make that connection across all the different spaces, not just looking at it purely from a climate perspective or purely from a conservation perspective, but it helps bridges the gaps that currently exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece Meta. Mr. Monton-Rameau, it'd be lovely to get some of your reflections on the work that the meteorological department is working on and how you're seeing the traditional knowledge and the data gathering supporting your different forecasting products and so on.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for inviting me to this presentation this afternoon. VMGD is one of the departments under the Ministry of Climate Change, and one of the mandate of the department is to ensure that early warning information is disseminated to the last mile, of course, the communities. And when I say last mile, that means the average middle class, they are already covered inside in that last mile perspective. So for VMGD2, as Sina has mentioned, it was a fortunate to have the Vancouver project to collaborate with other developing partners such as CSIRO and of course POM, APCC, to help bridge that gap by developing the app that is at the moment is widely known to the end users, especially those who have the phones. But we still have a long way to make sure that everyone who have the phones know how to access that app, because there is no point of us creating those apps with so much information, and we have very little, a minority of the population have access to that information. So our challenge now and our program now is to make sure that we reach the last mile through our policies, first of all, our frameworks, that we have to ensure the governance of different departments, because it is a cross-cutting issue, to make sure they access to that app and pass that information, whether in an oral form, first to the families at home, and then to spread out. Because I found that most of the information we have firstly with the offices, it wasn't disseminated around the family table. You can send officers to have community awareness, but when they come to the family, they don't talk about adaptation, they don't talk about climate. And that is one thing that if we want this to be an inclusive approach, we have to start from home to talk about this climate resiliency, climate approach at home. And of course, from there, then we can approach the neighboring communities and of course, to reach the last mile. So for VMGD, we have worked together through the project to develop develop the OSCA app. The OSCA app is tailored purposely to ensure that the agricultural products of various products have been accessed, the accessibility, the numbers, the soil, or where it is located. So the OSCA app is purposely for the agriculture sector. So the farmers can have access to that app to ensure that they have an up-to-date weather information, the rainfall information, so they can make informed decisions on the planning and operations of the farms. We have, I think, while the project was still continuing on and is still continuing on, we have a lemon production, the Thailand lime from Vanuatu has been using the hub to help commercial farmers to export the Thailand lime to New Zealand. And this is one typical example of how the hub helps the local farmers who venture into commercial aspect of the production to help push the economy of the country. So as far as early warning information is concerned, we don't just enable the communities to be aware of meteorological and geological assets. We also inform them, as Sina F said, try to find all the gaps where we can disseminate early warning information about El Nino, La Nino, and tsunami and all this that might cause casualties to human lives and of course will cost the infrastructure, which will give a burden to the country to rebuild the economy. But the apps that we, the VMGDS, I think it makes it easier. It makes it easier for our database to collect, to record, and monitor those data, and they're up-to-date data. During the National Outlook, Climate Outlook Forum in Sando in Vanuatu, we disseminated about 47 mobile phones. And of course, eight or six tablets to our officers who are mandated in the communities to have access to those tablets so that they can drive the traditional knowledge information back to the office, to the data that we have, data server that we have. So we've seen a minor milestone, but that also gives us an indication that we can tap into that platform of using social media. And one of those is this, the application that we have developed through the projects. We have ClimateWatch, we have the OSCA. These are one or two apps that we have. The only challenge now is how do we sustain those apps? How do we sustain them once when the projects are phased out? And as the director concern is, we want to build a local expert to maintain the software, as well as we want to also make sure that these apps continue and sustain and maintain by local expertise. And this is one of the things that we worked very hard on with our partners to make sure that the transition phase of the project, they don't just lift all of a sudden, but they stay within the department for 1 or 2 years to make sure that transition phase is effectively transferred to local expertise so that sustainability is guaranteed for the future of the department as a mandated institution to give early warning information for all to the people of Vanuatu. Thank you. I might answer a few more questions, but that will come in the Q&A.
Thank you, Montan. Moira, you're heading up the Van Curip project and is very close to the ClimateWatch Vanuatu project as well. Did you want to talk anything more specifically, potentially, about where you're seeing the enthusiasm and excitement that you can work with, but also some more of the challenges that you're facing when starting something new and trying to do something that is innovative? Even with catalytic funding, there's still things that we go, I didn't think that would be so exciting or so interesting, but I also didn't realise that would be so challenging. If you've got any thoughts about that, and if you think that there's other things that we as a group would like to know about in terms of the projects that you run.
Thank you very much, Fiona. for inviting myself and my director to join this panel on ClimateWatch. Yes, for Vancrap, as Director Montin mentioned earlier, it's a very new tool, and in our department, there are only 2 traditional knowledge officers that are collecting TK data, traditional knowledge data, across Vanuatu, and there are 80 islands. So first up, it's making a huge difference. It's a very positive impact. So that's a very, very big advance for VMGD. Today, I can say that any young people, any of our Meteo staff across Vanuatu, officers, can have an app on their phone, and they can be, because it's very easy to use. All the instructions are there. You just have to look at it and see all the different symbols of different indicators of animals, plants, and you just take a photo snap of it and upload it. Even if you don't have the data, phone data I mean, it can still upload once you buy some new or credit or recharge your phone, then it uploads your data into the app, into the database. So it's a very big advantage, because some of the islands, as I think Sina, you mentioned, some of the islands are very remote and they do not have access to internet as well. So like whenever we get introduced to a new technology or a tool, we first think, does it need data? My island doesn't have towers, telecom tower. I cannot use that. And it's the first question that people ask. And so one thing that we learned when we were running the training with communities in Vanuatu is that people start asking if an app needs data to work. But with this particular app, you can store your photos in there. Once you have access to Wi-Fi, then it starts uploading. So that's very big advantage. Also, we are finding that when we were running the training, director mentioned earlier, I think we had a training just late in November where we brought in all the rainfall collectors. So it's like a partnership with VMGD, that's Vanuatu Met Service, where it has volunteers who are collecting rainfall across Vanuatu, rainfall volunteers network. And so we train them so that they can go back to their islands. They can, as the director said, now they have a phone. They download the phone app and they can use the, they can upload data wherever they are across Vanuatu. So it's a very, very big advantage for us. Another thing is that because the app is available in the Google Play, whenever we're doing outreach or going to schools, you just simply tell the kids, there's a phone app here, this is how you use it, and they upload it and use it, download it and use it straight away. There's no difficulty in using that. So that's a very big step in what VMGD is doing through the project, collecting TK data, but at the same time educating the younger generation who have lost their traditional knowledge in terms of climate and weather, because it's not part of our curriculum in Vanuatu. And so even for me, only when I started working with VMGD, then I know, okay, these are indicators. But now when we have the phone app, it's educating kids. This tree is there and this is the purpose. When it's flowering, it means the season is coming. And so they will know when, which animals, plants to preserve. So it's making a very good, positive impact for us in Vanuatu. I think the challenge, I will finish now, but the challenge for us now is to maintain. The project is coming to an end, and we are seeing the challenge where we have this new tool, and it's like a baby, you cannot let it go yet. You still need to keep working with it, teaching, training more people to use it, our rainfall network volunteers to keep using it until it becomes part of their living, or becomes a habit. And so if we reach that level, then you know that when you leave and go, people will still be using the app. So thank you.
Thank you, Moira. I would like to ask some further questions of the panel, but I also open this up to anyone who's had any their interest piqued in some of the things that are happening here, in both this concept of these amazing goals and targets that Vanuatu has in terms of that integration between your extreme weather event forecasting and the safety of your people. And then there's this something that for Australians, we use an app to, like, you know, and you've talked about it more, your young people, you know, pick it up really quickly. And these types of things that are going, all of these outcomes that weren't anticipated around continuing traditional knowledge education that's been lost. So not only are we looking at gaps in data for modelling and forecasting and safety and decision making, we're also talking about the flip side of that beautiful emerald dove that you have, the Pacific emerald, or the sotleg, it actually has something to do with climate and weather, and the kids might not know that. These are really interesting and exciting things. So do I have any questions from the audience before I... Yeah, Fiona, please. Oh, hold on.
We had Mangrove Watch up in Cairns, where I live, and it'd be interesting to, I mean, obviously a lot of the tropical stuff we have as well, so I'd like to see the app, just as a sort of a naturalist, but an amateur naturalist up in Cairns. But yeah, it's interesting how these things are. I was just in Brazil in the Amazon last couple of weeks ago, and the mangoes were falling, and I asked people in Cairns, are the mangoes dropping there too? And they were. So, and I said, when does it start raining here? And they said around Christmas, which is the same as in Cairns. So yeah, it was, a lot of these things are useful. I don't base my life around it. I mean, I know what it's like in the Pacific. You know, there's a cyclone heading our way, and you guys have been through that stuff for adaptation and all those sort of things. So, yeah, I think this is a great tool. It sounds really fantastic, and like you said, gets people involved in traditional knowledge and technology at the same time. That's more a statement, I think.
So please.
Thank you. As far as early warning information is concerned, this is another way of approaching inclusiveness. We've worked with, through the project, we've worked with various sectors. And by working with various sectors to develop the apps, disseminate the information, it is one way to to strengthen the resilience, the climate resilience across the nation. And we have seen that this project is one of the flagship projects in the Pacific. And Vanuatu has been going through this project. And hopefully Sina will indicate whether this will be a duplication or replication of similar projects to other Pacific countries, because we've seen the impact, and we are all related, we are all similar in tropical climate and traditional knowledge in particular. So this is a very important project for us. It is a flagship in the Pacific. And Sina will surely say that, okay, by the end of the project, we will duplicate this, but we have to find some way, somehow, to duplicate this project to other neighboring countries to also have the same similar apps that we have, in particular to traditional knowledge. Just before I finished, during the PMC meeting in Fiji, I mentioned something on the relevancy of traditional knowledge. And when I mentioned the relevancy of traditional knowledge, then I'm putting my reference point to the environment surrounding us. The climate change impact doesn't only affect human beings. It affects every non-living things and living things. And that includes animals and plants. So when talking about a traditional knowledge of saying when is the mango flowering season begins, when is the hornet put a nest on the floor or on the ground, these are also some of the things that we have to consider when it comes to traditional knowledge, because the behavior of plants, the responses, the behavior of animals will also change over time, because we are all impacted by the impact of climate change. So our behaviors and mindsets will also shift the transition of our livelihoods. So one of the challenges for us is to make sure that we have a continuous development and capacity building on research and innovation, so that we can make sure that the relevancy of traditional knowledge makes sense and feasible to our people. Thank you.
I'd comment on the fact that Earthwatch has been running ClimateWatch in Australia since 2009. And project funding is actually one of the biggest hardships of continuing to grow and engage community, because this type of longitudinal work and the repeated collection of data to be able to create models and decisions requires both community engagement and the assessment of the data. And for us at Earthwatch, that's been you consistently go back strategically to say, is this important? The use case in Australia is very different to the Pacific for this tool and this research. And for us, it's consistently, the data set's still useful, we're still going to these different places. And so for us, we always go, is it time to give it up, but has it already done its job? And we consistently, all of our stakeholders say no. The tool as a climate education tool, being able to be really, that allows people to understand the nature-climate nexus at the kitchen table, as you're talking about, is really something that's quite powerful, because plants and animals around us are something that you can actually see, touch and feel and take notice of there in your backyard. But please, Sina, talk a bit more about what Montan's talking to.
Yeah, thank you. I think my esteemed panelists members here have alluded to some of the challenges and also some of the opportunities, and that's what I'm going to touch on, because I know, as you mentioned, the app was developed for a specific reason and unknown to you at the time, and also those that developed. You didn't foresee that there will be these other opportunities to expand the application of the work. In fact, when we were in Vanuatu to do our first training on the app, it was right after Vanuatu was hit by twin cyclones. One of the challenges that continuously face Pacific Islands is of, not just developing the app, but also look at how do we make sure that it's relevant for each country. Because we have so many Pacific Island countries, different environments, different species. So that is another challenge. Apart from funding, and we all know funding will always continue to be a problem, but rolling this out to other countries, because already I have been asked by other Met Services director, when is their turn? And we've only just started with 20 species. We don't have all of the traditional knowledge indicators because all these changes to the app cost money. But the reality is the value of the data sets that comes out of it, it has a lot of application, not just for one sector. And I think one of the opportunities for us is to look at how do we amplify these examples, making sure that everyone that's working in these different spaces are aware of the results, the opportunities, but also where to from here. It's like what's been shared already. We have so many challenges, and for us, having an app for the sake of having an app is not just it's no longer the in thing. For us, it's having an app that has multiple functions and also can be sustained, and there's longevity of that app, and that speaks to the relationships with the partners. So these are some of the things that we have to also consider. It's long-standing relationships that will go hand in hand with the development of the app. And I'm glad that IUCN is a rep is sitting here, because we have a long-standing partnership within the region of working together, and also we have a trusting relationship, because a lot of the activities in the Pacific is based on trust, and that will also go. It's the same for this app. On our side, even when we go out into countries or communities, when we roll out something, our communities are trusting us to give them something that we won't, just roll it out and then drop it a year later. So these are some of the things that we'll consider, but definitely our job at SPREP is to look at rolling this out, always looking for funding to support our member countries and expanding the work. And perhaps this conversation needs to be held between those working in the environment space, the conservation space, because we're using this, those working in the climate disaster resilience space are using this app, but we haven't taken this message across. So this cross-pollination of, bringing, let's not keep this app just to ourselves, but share this message will probably gauge more interest and perhaps probably lead to more opportunities to collaborate and expand on this work. If the Met Services have come up with probably 5 additional usage for the app, I'm pretty sure other members will add more or see other functions of the same app and how they can use the data set that will come out of this app. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Siasina Mele. Are there any other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
I just wanted to know the future sustainability of this app, because in the past when we did some projects, what happens is during the project period people use the app more frequently, but when the project is phased out, the usage is drastically going down. Are there any mechanisms that we have built in for continuous use and sustainability of this app usage, so that you can collect continuous data and monitor and then validate the information? Thank you.
Do you mind if I answer that first? And it's because we've been running this app for so long, and that's been one of the ways that Earthwatch has innovated. So I can tell you, so for starters, repeat data. So we started to go out to land management partners, local councils, parks, places, this is in Australia, to say, would you like a ClimateWatch trail? What that really means is identify the species that you want your local people to be looking at because they're useful to you in your management of your land. And so at that place, you actually have people who care about the results, and so they'll invest in that engagement of their community to be able to do repeat data. On the flip side, we also work closely with schools and teachers. So teachers, we train lots and lots of teachers because this allows the program to be embedded in curriculum. So you've got kids going out into nature, learning outside, which is always a brilliant outcome for any project. And so you have that training process where you start thinking laterally around the type of ways in which you can collect the data you need by talking to the different communities. So that's a couple of different ways. Another brilliant way, which will be different for each nation, is university lecturers. So essentially, Biology 101, the app teaches people about the importance of observation and scientific validity. So we get the university students, or the university students go out and, as part of their assessment, need to do X number of observations. But then we don't leave it at that. We give them the data back, because if they've done a rubbish job and just taken five photos of their balcony plant, they have to sort out the mess. So it provides that way of educating on numerous levels, but also because it's part of a major curriculum, it means that you get lots of data. So there's clever ways in which you can do it. I think that taking some of the use cases around for Vanuatu, I would suggest tourism operators, cruise ships. Get them, so then you've got this type of revenue stream. I was just chatting to, we were really lucky to have two of the traditional knowledge database staff come out to Melbourne to learn more about it, and I was having a chat saying, yeah, we work with tourism operators all the time because they're always wanting to work with their people to get them interested in what's got around them. So anyway, please, any further response?
Well, for Vanuatu is for this project, I think the Moira has just mentioned it correctly. It's a baby. It's a baby given to us, but are we capable of feeding that baby to become a giant in the future? That's a challenge for us. As far as the project has been going on, how to sustain that? Well, we have tried to educate the local communities through CCC, the Community Climate Centers. There are 6 of them that we've established throughout the region, throughout the province. So through those CCC app that we have, our offices are there, and we are working closely with NDMO, because all along we have been, NDMO is our right hand. When we deliver information from Met Office, it's the it's the NDMO to translate. We translate that information, scientific information, early warning information to Met Office, the NDMO, and NDMO are the ones to respond when it comes to crisis. So we collaborate together in our provinces through the local government governance structure. And we make sure that if we don't have our offices in the particular community, then we collaborate with NDMO, because NDMO is spread all over the country. And we work together to educate them, to make sure that they help disseminate the information, even to teach the school children who visit the NDMO or even the CCC in the communities, to make sure that they are educated to use that. Another one that we have to get lessons from Australia, and thank you very much for the intervention before I respond. Of course, we will get more information on how you sustain the hub through the experience that you have. But for 1 or 2 years, we still have a long way to go. But since that the project comes to a phase, I think we're just at a discussion that we have 2 years an extension of the project. So we're looking at a transition phase to make sure how durable and robust information we have from our experts, from our developing partners on the app, to make sure that they transfer all the knowledge to our local expertise, and that knowledge can be transferred to our local, even ordinary citizens who are appointed to just to take care of our AWS, and which are also part of the Triple C. So the sustainability is going to be a challenge for us, but when there is a will, there is a way. Thank you.
Can I just a quick one, and thank you for that. Sustainability of any activity within the Pacific is always a challenge because we always have a lot of staff turnovers. It's the nature of the work that we do. Sometimes either they move outside of the Pacific region or we recycle ourselves. That's how I call it. I too was recycled to regional organizations. And we also have a lot of lessons learned. We have the benefit of having 14 other countries, so we learn from the mistakes of our brothers and sisters and continue to build. And also, one of the things that we've done, especially with IT-related activities, is continue to work. So this is the role of crop agencies like SPREP. We have here in the room one of our IT experts who works on the traditional knowledge database, but that's not the only work they do. They also provide backup to our national Met services so that when there's a gap within their IT personnel, they provide training, or they also look at transitioning some of the knowledge. We also have internships within our organization to try and make sure that we have a plan to make sure the services are supported, but also look ahead. We always try to look for 5 options because we never know which one we're going to face with, because sometimes for us, someone may resign because they have to move and look after their parents. So these are other challenges. And the other one around capacity building is providing research and scholarship opportunities. And this is something that this program has actually done, is open up a master's scholarship for one of the Vanuatu students so that they can continue to not only build their skill sets, but continue to work in this area. And when they come back, they probably have upskilled themselves, not only in the academic world, but also probably have been exposed to other ways that we can improve the app and the work we do. I think these are some of the work that we can do, but again, we'll look to other countries to provide. Yeah.
Thank you, Sina. Just to add on to what Sina has mentioned, to get around the sustainability of this, I think during the PMC, we were with PMC's Pacific Meteorological Council. It was held in Fiji. And one of the thematic areas that we've talked about is traditional knowledge, how to strengthen the traditional knowledge, because as you all know, that the network is not all covered in the Pacific. Even they have remote. Even if the networks are down just after the tropical cyclone strikes, then you're looking for like 2, 3, 4 weeks for the signal to come back. So we rely on traditional knowledge to make sure that we get our communities resilient, to use the basic knowledge to predict when the cyclone and what is necessary for them to take response. One of these, I think Sina will agree that it's the Weather Ready Pacific. It's another way to address and collaboration among the experts within the Pacific. And that was discussed during the PMC meeting, that how do we collaborate to improve the early warning information, especially when it comes to multi-early warning information for all. And I think the Weather Ready Pacific, it is owned by the Pacific regions, which are 14 countries. And I'd like to say thank you to the Australian government that already put in 40 million to start off with the program. Thank you so much, Australian government, and we're looking forward to get around when and how to see how to manage those shortages of expertise and the very expensive weather monitoring equipments that we have. Probably we will rotate the staff. It might be all something that we have to get around it, but thank you very much, Australia, for investing already on the Weather Ready Pacific, and we're looking forward to more collaborations in that aspect in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We are at the end of the session, and I just want to thank you all for being here with us, both here and virtually. And just thank you all for sharing your wisdom and knowledge and the opportunities and the challenges. It's great. And of course, thank you to the Global Ecosystem-based Adaptation Fund for making these types of projects a reality. So thank you.